South Africa and France this weekend, folks. Probably the game of the weekend. I mean, you got second place France, who just scraped through against the Aussies last week, against fourth place South Africa, who only just lost it away from home against number one in the world, Ireland. Anyway, we're going to go through some predictions, some squads, some stats, recent history, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Like I mentioned, the French almost lost it to the Aussies. Their winning run, which is at like 11 games now, was almost ended by the Australians, but they managed to fight back and get a winner pretty late on. And that's something that this French squad under Gaultier has been able to do, is that even when they're not quite 100%, they still tend to find a way to win games. And they've kept things pretty steady as the squad that played last week. Baille, Marchand and Atonio is the same front row. They didn't really get the upper hand that much on the Aussies. I thought it was a bit of an arm wrestle, which against the Springbok pack may be a little bit disconcerting. But then, like, Baille had only come back from injury to play his first game last week, I think, against the Aussies. So he'll be certainly one game sharper. Woki and Flament continue on in the second row. Not the biggest second row you will ever see, but certainly very skilled. Jelonch, Ollivon and Alldritt are the back row. That is also steady as she goes from last week. I mean, I don't remember many people talking about Alldritt last week because everything's talking about Penaud and the late try, but I mean, Alldritt just quietly has like 50 meters run, and I think he was France's like second top tackler. So the guy gets through the work pretty much week in, week out. He is absolute class. Dupont and Ntamack continue on 9-10. Dupont is captain, and Ntamack is another one who was a bit short on game time, who will be another week sharper, having played last week. Danty and Fickou likewise continue on in the midfield. Danty is that big unit, so his battle up against the big man and Damian is going to be a fascinating one to watch. And Fickou just continues to be class, man. Like, when they score a try on the counter at the end of the first half last week, who's like helping put the ball through into the space for them to chase? It's Fickou, man. The guy is kind of next level IQ in terms of rugby brains. Penaud, as I said, got the game winner last week. It got burned for pace earlier on in the game, but proved his worth when he basically won the game for them at the end of the game last week. And Moefana's on the left wing. Ramos with that boot of his and his running game too also contributed pretty well to the French effort last week. So yeah, same starting 15. No changes whatsoever. The only changes come out on the bench. Mauvaka is still there, but Wardi is going to get his first game if he comes off the bench in the number 17 jersey. Flament is still there. Tafafanua is there. And then you got Bastien Cyril. I think he's like 30 years old. I must have seen him play, but he's not really registered on my radar. So anyone with some insights to this guy will have to let us know. I did look him up. He seems to be a 30-year-old big unit of a man, 2+ meters. Makalu, Luku, and Jalibert are the remaining three replacements. So it's just the two specialist backs. And Jalibert, to be honest, came on and looked sharp last week. So it's maybe a little harsher on he doesn't get a start. But Ntamack is the preferred guy. And remembering Makalu, despite being a loose forward by trade, can certainly fill into the back line when needed. He did it against Japan a couple of times, I think, in the Tour of Japan earlier in the year, so he's literally got the experience. I should mention Gerassi is injured. That is the reason he is not available for this one. For the Springboks, they have made a few changes to the squad compared to the squad that played in Ireland last week. Oxenche and Bongi and Bonambi get starts, and Franz Moefana continues on at tight head. So it's not wholesale changes because Marks and Kitsoff are still on the bench. It's just a wee bit of rotation. Etzebeth and Mostert are in the second row. Lutiaga is, I think he injured his shoulder again, didn't he? That's a real pity because that guy's a proper skills merchant. But I mean, Mostert came off the bench last week and scored a try, so he'll continue on. And Etzebeth set one up. So watch out for that Springbok second row. Hey, Kolisi, Pieter-Steph, and Visa are the back row. Of those three, I think it's probably Visa that... Like, I talked him up last week as he's been like the most impressive Springbok back rower thus far this year, but he wasn't able to impose himself. I think there was maybe an injury cloud over him for this week, right? But yeah, compared to Alldritt's game last week, Visa was relatively quiet. So assuming he's 100%, let's see him put his head down and smash into some tackles, eh? Faf de Klerk gets a start at 9, so he's up from the bench. Damian Willemse continues on at 10. And he's another guy who's going to be a match sharper for having played last week. And I know he's going to get a lot of the blame for the kick-in that went on last week, but he did do some decent stuff ball in hand. Like, he's still a very much solid attacking threat. So, yeah, I don't want to write the guy off. And about the goal kicking, Jacques Nienaber was a wee bit touchy about that last week, or this week when they interviewed him in the press conference. He kind of went on and on about how they're working on it, and that Damian doesn't play 10 that often. And yeah, when he was asked about it in the press conference, he just seemed a little bit riled up by that one. So the goal kicking is certainly a thing. It may be a factor in this game, but neither side has that great goal kicking numbers this year, to be honest. They're both in the 70s across the season. Who else have we got? Damian Delenda, Jesse Krill, same midfield like I mentioned. Damian's battle against Danty is going to be fun to watch. Kirtley, Aronsa and Cheslin Colby are the wingers, so Colby shifts from the fullback jersey to a more familiar right wing, and Villy Leroux, who certainly added a bit of, playmaking to that back line last week. He gets a start in his familiar 15 jersey. So, hopefully the wingers for South Africa get some ball this week. I know Aronsa got that late try, but I think they had, 3 carries the whole game? It wasn't a lot. They didn't see a lot of ball, the South African wingers. So, we'll see if there's any change. I mentioned about Marks and Kitsoff on the bench alongside Koch. Marvin Ori comes into the 23 with Mostert getting promoted and Lut being out. So Ori gets a chance. Quokka Smith has been a bit of a bench, I don't want to say professional, but he's an impact man, isn't he? When he comes off the bench, Quokka Smith, he's going real fire and brimstone, so that's been pleasing to see. I think he's definitely an impact guy. Corbett Reinach is in the squad this week as well, and Nienaber basically mentioned like he plays in France, so he knows French rugby, he knows these players, and he's the kind of guy, he didn't say it directly, but I think he assumes with his pace to take advantage of some tired legs. Libbok is also there. Mani Libbok. Finally, folks. We see Mani Libbok in the Springbok side. I think they said he's been with the squad like 3 weeks now. And he's been kind of looking better every week in terms of running the show and training. So, pleasing for him. And Makazole Mapimpi is there in an unfamiliar 23 jersey. So, a few guys rotated in. Jaden Hendricks is rotated out. They basically said he's played a lot of game time this season. Dion Farid likewise rotated out. So, changes. More so than for the French. Stats. You know I love my stats, folks. There's some really interesting ones for France and South Africa. Like, stereotype is that France are playing real exciting rugby and the Springboks just love to bloody kick it. But looking at the numbers, man, it's France that is the team that is quite happy to put some boot to ball. They kick more than the Springboks and they play without the ball, man. I mean, last week was a little bit of an exception against the Aussies. But France are happy to play without the ball and defend. They play with less possession, but a lot of territory compared to a lot of the teams, or I think all the teams at Tier 1. France really back themselves on defence and to be able to hit you on the counter. But it's also interesting that both these teams are very, very secure on their own ruck ball. Very, very few rucks lost on their own ball for these sides. I think these sides are pretty much neck and neck in terms of having those numbers really down quite low. They concede very little lost ball at ruck time. However, the French win turnovers like crazy, and part of that is they like to play without the ball, so they're going to win more turnovers, right? But yeah, that's like just, what is it, like immovable object, unstoppable force kind of thing. Like France winning turnovers like crazy, Springboks conceding very few turnovers. Like which one's gonna triumph? I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Like France, 7 turnovers a game, man. That's crazy. France's line-out is interestingly better than the Springboks one this year, 91% to 87%. Neither side has great goal kicking, as I mentioned, but Ramos last week was very sharp for France, which is, again, what we couldn't say for South Africa, but I would imagine their goal kicking will be better this week. They've been working on it, according to Coach Nienaber. What is interesting, though, South Africa, man, they got a beast of them all. Absolute beast of them all. Nobody's mauled it more in 2022 than South Africa. And nobody has scored more maul tries in 2022 than South Africa. But France have only conceded 1 maul try all year, as far as I'm aware, and that was to Ireland in the Six Nations. So, again, another one of those battles, like France's maul defense, South Africa's maul. Which one's going to triumph? I don't know, man, but it's going to be fun to watch either way. Recent history, 5-zip. to the box. Haven't played in a while. Played a tour in 2017. The Springboks swept them, and then a game in France in 2017, one in 2018. 2018 one was close. It was 29-26 with a late winner for the Springboks, and that one they won it at the death. But it's really hard to read anything into that because the Springboks squad that played here is pretty similar. There's a few guys that have left, like Warren Whiteley's now gone. What's his name? Lowe is gone. What's his first name? Can't remember it at the moment. Someone will remind me in the comments. Francois Lowe. There you go, I got it. Francois Lowe was in that squad. Like, he's moved on. But the core of that squad is very similar to what we see, whereas the French squad is virtually unrecognizable. There's a few guys like Fickou was there on the bench. Dupont was there on the bench. I think Penaud was starting. But there was like Medard and Girardeau and Serran, Picamol, Lopez, Bastero. Like, all these guys have been moved on from that French squad of the past. So the average score is 31-17 across the last 5. But as I said, there's a lot changed since then. I think the last French win is 2009, so it's a wee while since the French have had any luck against the South Africans. That being said, the predictions-wise, it's a split. It's the only game this weekend that I've seen which is a split, whereas the bookies have got the French at home by 4, but the Rugby Forecast algorithm, which loves it some head-to-head stats, is saying the South Africans, but only by 2. So, yeah, it should be an interesting one. It's on at Marseille rather than Paris this week, so that's a bit of a change from the normal. It's on a Saturday. Wayne Barnes is the ref, so you won't get much more experience than that. It's a 9 o'clock p.m. local kickoff. The French do love a late start for us. For my part of the world, 9 o'clock would be considered a pretty late start, but there you go. You guys let us know your thoughts. Who do you reckon is going to get the job done? Do you think the French at home are going to be too good, or do they look a little bit vulnerable last week against Australia? South Africa, you think if they can kick their goals, will give the French something to think about? You guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.